Hi everyone, my name is Cyrus. Welcome to my channel. Today we're here to talk about Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. Let me just start off by saying this was an absolute joy to read. I absolutely loved this book. It was such a fun read, but also such an easy read. It was just so easy to read through this story. Every time that I found myself picking up a book to read, I just kept thinking, oh, I could read one more chapter, I could read one more chapter. I only ever stopped reading this book when I actually had to stop reading it. It was just that much of a thoroughly enjoyable read. I really, really loved this book. So in this story, you're following Elizabeth Zott, who is a chemist in the 1960s, and basically getting to see all of the various challenges that she's coming up throughout her life. She's living in an incredibly sexist society where being a chemist is effectively not allowed for women, and she's coming into all these different challenges. And Elizabeth Zott, let me just say, she is such a strong female character. Like, I would argue that you could put her up as like the poster child of what a strong female character should look like. She is just absolutely incredible, and the way that she is also just such a consistent character. Throughout the entirety of the story, no matter what's getting thrown her way, she really sticks and continues to be herself, and I really, really appreciate that about her as a character. And so throughout the story, like I said, you're kind of getting to see all the different challenges that she is getting thrown at. And like I said, not to go to too much detail in a bit of a spoiler-free section here, but it was just really enjoyable to see her pushing through adversity time and time again. And I will also say that in this story, there is such a wide range of extended characters and casts that are just absolutely incredible. Just some of the best extended characters in this story, and I really, really loved them and how they played into the story and affected Elizabeth and all these different things. Just truly a really fun, great read. I can't suggest it enough. And I'm going to jump into some spoiler thoughts now, so if you have read it, stick around. If you've not, come back after you've read the book and let's jump into some spoilers. I think I want to start off with the extended cast of characters that I was talking about, because there are so many. Although Zott steals the show, it's clear that Elizabeth steals the show. I don't think she could have done it without this vast array of characters that are helping her out throughout her whole story and her whole journey. Whether it be Calvin Evans and just the incredibly tragic love story that they share, it is truly so, it was so beautiful, and getting to see that connection was so nice, and just to see it kind of torn away in a second was devastating. It was truly so sad, but that connection, that kind of lays the groundwork for the rest of the story, even though it's only for a little bit of the beginning, is so strong, and it's so felt throughout that little part of the beginning of the story. And then 630, who I just absolutely loved. What a great character, and just such a funny name for a dog. Just another great character that, again, persists through the entirety of the story, and getting to see 630's relationship with Elizabeth, with Mad, with Calvin, just all these different kind of layers to it. Just not just a one-dimensional character, despite him being a dog in the story. Whether it's Mad, who is just such a smart kid, so resourceful, but at the same time still is a kid, and you can still see those childlike aspects that are coming up in this 5 and 6-year-old kid. Or Harriet. Harriet, I think, is maybe my favorite of all the side characters. I just absolutely loved her and her relationship with Elizabeth, and the friendship that they had, and how they really supported one another. I think it was just such a beautiful showcase of two women just propping each other up and doing everything they could to support and help one another. It was just really, really beautiful. Their relationship, and Harriet as a character, I just absolutely loved. Whether it's Walter, who is just, again, another really good character who helps Elizabeth and tries to support her as much as he can, and just honestly an example of a male character who's just not a complete douchebag in this story. And let me tell you, there are a lot of those characters in this story, but he was just a really nice character, and again, just showcasing a different aspect of things, and in some capacity helping Elizabeth kind of become who she needed to become. And I really liked their relationship and their friendship that they had together. It was an unlikely friendship, but it was really, really great. Or even all the people that were on the rowing team, or, you know, Wakely and just Miss Frask. There are so many people that I can't even specifically say everything about each one, but just the vast array of these side characters. I think, like I said, although Elizabeth clearly steals the show, it would not have been possible without having these really, thoroughly explored side characters that you start to really feel for in so many different ways. And so I really, really appreciated that combination of characters that we had throughout the story. And looking at Elizabeth a little bit more closely in her story, I really loved her story It was just, again, all the ups and downs. I guess I didn't love every single part of her story. There were some parts, frankly, that were just absolutely disgusting. Just some of the different things that happened to her and just, yeah, just repulsive behavior. But it really, I feel like it really showcased and highlighted for me the things that women were dealing with at that time, and honestly, frankly, still kind of are in some cases. And I think for me as a man reading this story, it just really acted as a reminder of some of the things that women are facing on a day-to-day basis, all the biases that are against them and all these kinds of things. And although it's not nearly as bad today as it was probably in the 60s, it's all still present. It all still happens. And it was refreshing to get to read about that from a woman's perspective and see all the things that she was dealing with. It was just really, I don't know, eye-opening, I guess. I just really appreciated seeing it through that perspective. And again, like I said, looking at how Elizabeth navigated all those different scenarios and situations and came out a better person for it. And like I said, never stopped being herself. I really, really appreciated that aspect of her story, that she was navigating that and doing all that stuff because, yeah, frankly, like I said, some of the stuff that happened to her is just absolutely repulsive. And although I don't want to get too deep into it because it's just, I don't think the point of the story, like I said, will just suffice to say that just horrible, horrible things happened to her. But overall, her story is still so heartwarming. And I really appreciated that. And although I don't want to go, like I said, deep into any of the horrible things that had happened, what I do want to do is highlight, again, the thing that I really love when this happens in stories is when all these little moments play into the larger scheme of a life, right? And of a story, and how they kind of lead to different things. How all these bad things happened that affected Elizabeth, made her basically she was fired from her job, and that ended up allowing her to build a lab at home, her own personal lab in her home. How eventually going back to things, and that ends up leading her to Harriet and getting to meet Harriet, and that relationship, like I said, is probably my favorite relationship of the whole story. And so all these little things, although in many cases horrible, that happened, led to different things. I just really like when that happens in stories. The little small decisions or small instances that lead to larger things that happen in the story. Like I said, I always connect that back to life and how you see that happening in real life too. And I just think that's a really, really neat to see that when that happens in stories. Okay, I do feel like I'm kind of going all over the place. Let me try and refocus myself a little bit here. Supper at 6. I loved how Elizabeth got this show and really, from day one, made it her own. How she took the show and took it seriously. She said, if I was going to do this thing, I'm going to do it as seriously as possible. And really spoke to women in a way that they needed to be spoken to. Not like they were lesser, but taking them seriously. That's ultimately what she was doing, was taking them seriously. And as a result of that, kind of creating this whole revolution. And it just really, really beautiful to see how she was able to do that and how she did that the entire time that she was on the show. She always took it seriously and she always took her viewership seriously. And I really appreciated that about the show and about Elizabeth taking that and doing that. It just really reminded me how much can happen when you take people seriously and don't treat them like they're lesser than you. It was really beautiful. That whole experience of Supper at 6 was so, so nice. And while all that is happening, I really liked how Mad was continuing to research things about her father, and how through her research we kind of are discovering little bits and little bits of Calvin Evans's past, and how Mad's relationship with Wakely and how that kind of goes. I thought they were a really cute pair, those two, and how they kind of are slowly chipping away at this larger mystery behind the story. I really liked that aspect of it too, just getting to see that in little snippets as we were going through. And ultimately that all kind of leads to the ending of the story, and how Elizabeth ultimately meets Calvin's mother, and all these falling dominoes have to fall into place in just the right way for this to kind of happen. It was just really satisfying to see that kind of all happen at the end of the story, even though, again, some frustration ensues while it's happening, right? But how the Life article gets published, and it's just a bunch of absolute hogwash and just so insane, but then all the responses being published of people writing about how crazy this whole thing is, how Roth ends up writing an actual proper article, sending it to Harriet, and Harriet works to get that published, and how all of a sudden now there's an article in Vogue that's the real article about who Elizabeth is, and how all these little things work out in such a way that allows Avery Parker to come in, buy majority shares in Hastings, and ultimately make Elizabeth the head of chemistry at Hastings, and Miss Frask the head of personnel. And just beautiful. Just such a beautiful, beautiful ending. And everyone gets what they deserved. It was, I'm getting shivers just talking about it. It was so, so nice to see all these things fall into place, especially for Elizabeth, who, like I said, was always herself and worked so hard to be herself and do what she wanted to do, and ultimately gets to reap the rewards of that and gets to actually be able to be a full chemist, even though she's always been a chemist, but now actually be a fully respected chemist and run a lab. Just so good. Such a good ending. It was wonderful. The only small nitpick that I could potentially give to this story is that there were times, especially kind of in the middle of the story, where it felt a little bit unclear about where the story was going. It kind of just felt like we were just along for a ride, and it didn't really feel like there was that much direction at some points in the middle of the story there. But that's me being like super nitpicky. If I really want to nitpick at things, it was just incredible all the way through, and I really, really enjoyed it. So overall, Lessons in Chemistry is an absolutely beautiful book. It's an amazing story about how a woman who faces a bunch of adversity continues to overcome that adversity, and always throughout it is always herself. It is just such a great story. You know, I debated giving Lessons in Chemistry a 4.5 because there are some points in the middle of the story, like I mentioned in the spoiler section, that I feel like it loses a bit of direction, but that would be dishonest. That would be dishonest. Ultimately, Lessons in Chemistry for me is a solid 5 out of 5 stars. It is just an absolutely phenomenal story. It was fun. It's an easy read. I would recommend this book to just about anybody. I absolutely loved Lessons in Chemistry. So, have you read Lessons in Chemistry? If you have, I would love to hear your thoughts about it in the comments down below. I would love to have a conversation about this book, so share your thoughts about it in the comments. And until next time.